our emotions are complicated and chaotic, but they aren't supposed to be, right? There's supposed to be a time and a place for everything. A song I grew up with reminds us, to everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to laugh, a time to weep. And just because that song was from decades before I was born and based on the Bible, that doesn't mean anything has changed since then. The Pixar movie Inside Out has an armchair evolutionary biology perspective on emotions. We evolved anger to protect ourselves from harm, and grief to get support from loved ones in a time of need. Cause and effect. A time for every emotion, everything with its place and its purpose. But that isn't how it actually works. Not for everyone, not all the time. In the rainy season, it might be natural to have a general malaise, to grieve the loss of the sun, especially when we have brilliant pharmaceutical marketers telling us all about seasonal affective disorder with the acronym of SAD. Never mind that some people grew up in the Pacific Northwest and rain makes them feel at peace and connected. Whenever a family member dies, we're supposed to be broken up, we're supposed to grieve. And when someone else dies or a pet dies, we're supposed to keep our emotions a little bit at arm's length, quickly move on. Never mind that the pet may have been our closest companion for more than a decade. We may have only seen our grandparent once a year. And if we grieve when we aren't supposed to, we're depressed. And if we don't grieve when we're supposed to, we're callous and bottling everything up. And we need to get in touch with our emotions. But emotions are complicated and chaotic, not always cause and effect, not always with a place or a purpose. All of the things I just talked about at least kind of make sense, but what am I supposed to do with grief over the heat death of the universe, over inevitable entropy? Everyone I know will be gone in 100 years, the sun will explode in a few billion, and if you believe the current predictions in physics, the Big Bang that happened 14 billion years ago is the last one that will ever happen, and the universe will slowly spread apart and grow cold over trillions of years, and all life will cease. Where is the season to mourn the universe? Where is the evolutionary biology reason to grieve something that won't happen in my lifetime or even the lifetime of this planet? Where is the ritual for entropy? And even if it isn't quite as grandiose as entropy, how do we grieve for the abstract things that are beyond us? How do we grieve for the death of a newspaper or a restaurant? How do we grieve for the end of a certain middle-class ideal? Or even the abstract things inside of ourselves. The death of the dream of being a doctor. The end of defining myself by my productivity, my job, by my quick wit. Mourning the person that we were when we were younger. Let me extinguish a candle for the stupid stuff I did in college. A moment of silence because the 80s music apparently counts as oldies now. Many of you know that my mom died when I was young, and in the past I gave a reflection about my grief at that time, about how it upended my whole world. And in the middle of the pandemic, I saw a therapist for a bit. Nothing too severe, just general anxiety about the world and my place in it that so many of us were feeling at that time. But my therapist kept wanting to go back to my mom. I think he wanted me to have some kind of unresolved grief or trauma, even though he admitted that whenever we talked about it, he hadn't seen any evidence of that. But his response was normal and natural too, because when someone really close to you dies, you're supposed to grieve forever. And it's not just therapists who react that way. When somebody brings up a death, you're supposed to say, "I'm so sorry for your loss," no matter how long ago it was, no matter how much time has passed. I think that's one of the reasons why mental health can be so difficult to talk about. We're always looking for a reason, a rationalization for emotions, but sometimes they don't fit into a neat box. Sometimes we aren't grieving because of the death or because of a tragedy. Sometimes there isn't unresolved trauma. Sometimes there isn't a cause or effect. Sometimes there is no season. Sometimes there is no place or purpose for our grief. Sometimes we simply grieve.